Perfect. Okay. And you guys can see my slides, right? Awesome. Do you see this top bar too? Kind of sucks. I don't know how to get rid of it.
Yeah, I
Oh
think
well.
it's okay. There's nothing there that is secret that we're not supposed to see.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to come and practice presentation and pitching skills with me. Um, so we'll jump straight into it. I thought it would be fitting to start this off with me telling a story. So we can give a little example of storytelling and what we're aiming for by the end of this workshop. And so I wanted to tell the story of my first hackathon. So I had just finished my first year of computer science at the University of Waterloo. And my friends and I decided we didn't have a lot of programming experience, but we wanted to try something new. We were going to sign up for Hack Western. And so we signed up, we got on the bus, we got there, we were so excited. It was in real life at that time. And we all arrived on the campus. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were full of energy. And so the start, we were very ambitious. We wanted to learn about Android apps. We wanted to learn about React apps. And if that already isn't challenging enough, we also wanted to learn about machine learning and make our own machine learning model. And so day one, we started with brainstorming. We said something that interests us is cities and noise in cities. I'm a person that loves peace and quiet. And so we wanted to make a heat map that would show you where the noisiest places in the city was. And we thought, how should we get the data for this? Well, we'll use people's phones because phones are usually where people are and people are where the noise is. And so we wanted an app on your phone that could track the noise around you, the noise levels. So day one, success. Great ideas came out. We got started. We were having fun. Day two, we were stressed. We realized this was such a big undertaking. We had never done something like this before. We were running into a lot of bugs in our code. We didn't have enough time to gather data to train our machine learning model. And so we were really discouraged. We took a break. They had a lot of really fun events happening at the hackathon as well. So we went and played with some therapy dogs. I remember that. It was so good. I should have included a picture of that on here too. But after that, we were stepping away from our project. And when we regrouped, we talked about it and we realized we are here for ourselves. We're here to have fun. We're here to learn. We're not trying to make something that's going to be impressive for the judges. That's not the goal. Hopefully they like it, but the goal was really just to learn for ourselves. So we decided to make our project a little more realistic. We scrapped the machine learning model and we focused on learning how to use Google Maps API to make the map that you're seeing on the screen here, how to get heat maps visualizations. Then we put the app on our phone and we ran around the building just trying to get samples of noise for each room in the building where everyone was coding their projects. And so what you're seeing is just that one building that we were in. But it worked. We did it. And at the end, when we saw it working, we were so proud of ourselves. And believe it or not, we actually won a prize for one of the most innovative projects at the hackathon, which we couldn't believe because we had thought that it was so bad that we couldn't even do the machine learning part. And so it all goes to show that if you just have fun, you can surprise yourself with the outcome. And after that, we finished the hackathon, we went home and we signed up for our next hackathon. So that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, and so now I wanted to go over some key elements of presenting and storytelling and how that hopefully applied to the story I just told you. So number one is to always consider your audience. So think about who you're speaking to. What are their motivations? Motivations meaning what do they either need? Do they have a need for something? Or what do they want? What do they want to hear? What will they find interesting? Also think about what their strengths and weaknesses are. What are they going to understand? What are they going to struggle with? And how can you just build empathy? A good story, one that people remember, it's one where they feel like it connected to them on a personal level. And so when I was picking my story to tell you all today, I thought about the position that you're in right now, how you must be feeling. You're doing a hackathon, potentially your first hackathon. It's day 3. You're going to be presenting this evening. You're probably feeling nervous. You're probably feeling a little stressed and excited at the same time. So I tailored my story to talk about an experience I had that hopefully you can relate to and something that you would want to hear about. Part 2 for my advice here is tell a story. So I love to consider presentations storytelling. I think that's the way to make it most captivating. And if you think of a story, if you think of your favorite movie or your favorite book, they always start, they have a clear beginning, middle, end. That's the fundamental recipe to a story. So at the start, you want to make sure that you're captivating. You want to start with something that's going to hook your audience in right away. At the start of my story, I jumped straight in with, I'm telling the story of my first hackathon. You know what I'm talking about. You are in a hackathon. You're like, I'm interested. I want to hear about this. Then you want the middle to be informative. You want to give details that matter to the story, that are relevant to the story, that are going to build up your characters in the story, that are going to build up what you're talking about. And so in the middle, I talked about what we were building at the hackathon. I talked about what we were struggling with at the hackathon, really showing the arc of the story and the problems that you run into. And then you want the end to be satisfying. That's how you remember a good story. Have you ever watched like a TV show and then the season ends and it ends on like cliffhanger and doesn't answer any questions? And then you just hate it. You're so upset. You're like, I can't watch anymore and I don't even know what happened. We don't want that. We want our audience to feel like they got the answers they came here to get. And so at the end, I didn't stop in the middle of my story and say, we struggled so much, we had to scrap our machine learning model. And that's the end of my story. No, I told you about what happened after. We ended up winning a prize. How cool is that? We realized that we just needed to believe in ourselves. And so like having that conclusion, that satisfying ending really pulls it all together. And then a couple other tips on just storytelling. It's good to be organized, tell things in a chronological order, an order that makes sense. It wouldn't have made sense if I talked about the prize at the beginning and then I went back. That might be confusing for your audience. So when you're telling the story of your projects, for example, um, make sure that you're talking about the order in which you build things in, the order in which your users might use your app or your product that you're building. Make sure it's also cohesive. So you want everything to be relevant and related. You don't want to be bringing up things that aren't really related to your project. Keep it on topic. And the last point here is keep it simple and concise. So sometimes less is more. It doesn't have to be very elaborate. It doesn't have to be very long. Um, Sometimes there's a skill in saying less, but having that be high quality and high impact. And then the final tip here is confidence. You've heard it before. Um, it would make a huge difference if I started my story and I was talking really quietly and I was looking away and I was nervous and I was like, oh, this is my first hackathon. It was cool. We made a app and there was a map and I wanted to track noise pollution. I thought it was interesting. That wouldn't have been as fun to listen to. It would have been boring and you wouldn't have probably understood what I was saying half the time. And you wouldn't have wanted to ask questions or get to know more about my story. So even if you didn't complete the project you wanted to do, you didn't get as far as you wanted to get, have that confidence and pride in what you did accomplish and make that reflective in your presentation because that's going to make people want to listen to you. So I have written down here, the audience only will believe your story if you believe your story. You need to believe that your product is worth the time to talk about it, to share it with people, because then that will show through. And also be honest. So be honest about what you accomplished. If you're getting questions from your audience, from the judges later today about, hey, like, how did you build this? Or do you know how this works? And you don't, that's okay. No one knows everything. And so rather than trying to pretend, make up a story that you might not be confident in, that's where your confidence is going to start to go down. Instead, be honest about what you know, because that will maintain your confidence. You can say things like, I haven't researched that before, but I'm going to look into that later because it interests me. Or I've thought about it a little, but here's a question I have on it. What do you think? And so I think that's a really good approach, especially when you're preparing your pitch. Um, if you didn't get to complete certain parts of your project, end your pitch on, so here's what we didn't get to build, but what we hope to build like next time we work on this. That's showing that you are committed and you want to carry this forward. And so I think that's a great approach. And the final point here is think about how you can prepare. Don't wait till it's 5 minutes before the presentation and then say, okay, you'll talk about how we built it and I'll talk about what we learned and we're good. Practice it a few times. Give yourself at least 30 minutes before, rehearse it a couple times, make sure you're comfortable with what you're saying, because if you know what you're going to say, then that will help so much with the nerves that you might feel when you're presenting. So that is my 3 big tips on how to tell a good story, how to give a good presentation. And the final bit I wanted to include here was just some specifics on hackathon pitches and what's important to include in those. So number 1, go over the problem and go over who it affects. In my story, I went over the problem, which was that we were struggling with the machine learning part of our project, and it was affecting us because it was making us stressed and we weren't going to finish in time. Then talk about how you're going to solve this problem for those people. These can be, sorry, I just need water for 1 second. My throat's like dry already. All right, back at it. um, so those first 2 parts, they can be pretty short. You don't need to focus too much of your time on it, but they're important. You want to make sure you're clear about what that problem is and what you're solving. Then the heart of your presentation is going to be the demo, because that's showing off what you actually built. We want to see that. That's what you've been working on the last 2.5 days. So share your screen, have a video recording already prepared, or do it live, whichever one you're more comfortable with. But show us what you built. Show us yourself interacting with it. Something I love to do is tell it from a user's perspective. So if your product was an app where you place an order for food, you would go in and say, I'm a user who's hungry and I want to place my order for food. I'm going to open up the new order page and talk through it like that, and we'll get to see everything that your app can do. Number 4 here, this one's optional if you have time, but I personally love to see this, is when people include what was really challenging and what they learned in the process of making their project. It's really interesting to hear about what people struggle with and how they overcome it. And I think that adds a lot of character to the presentations. And finally, what's next? I love to end on this. It's really good for the judges and all of your fellow students to see what your plans are for your project. Do you plan to use it? How do you plan to get people to use it? Are you going to market it somehow? Are you going to work on it more? Are you going to add new features to it, improve things? There's never an end to these things. They can always be built upon. And so just give some ideas for what you see next for your project. And that's my good luck slide. I think all of you are going to do amazing. We can take some time now to practice with the folks who are in the room. But before we get to that, I will pause and ask if anyone has questions about anything that I just shared. Something they teach you in presentation workshops is that you're supposed to wait at least 8 seconds when you ask a question, so that anyone who's nervous and doesn't want to say anything will have plenty of time.
It could be a good sign when people don't have questions. It means you answer all their questions, all their thoughts, right? Like what you said in the presentation earlier. Like make sure you include what they want to hear. So
Mhm.
that could be a good sign.
Well, thank you, Doina. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it says in the chats, I think you cover all of my questions. So I'm going to stop recording this. And then,
Perfect.
yeah, so for everybody, good luck.
Good